The air smelled like metal, blood, and dust. The slave market was almost empty now. It had been loud in the morning, buyers shouting, whips cracking, aliens crying, but now only silence remained. Most of the cages were empty. Chains lay on the floor like dead snakes. The merchants had packed their credits. Smiling at another successful auction, rich aliens had taken the strong ones, the tall, the fast, the beautiful. Only one slave was left. She sat in the shadows, her back against a rusted pole. Her blue skin was bruised and stained with dried oil. Her long hair, once silver, now looked like tangled wire. Her dress had once been beautiful, orange with black stitching, but now it was torn and dirty. She had cybernetic arms and legs, but they were broken. Sparks came out from her left wrist. Every time she moved, her left eye blinked slower than the right. She looked like a broken toy left behind because no one wanted her anymore. A fat alien merchant kicked some dust near her feet. "No one wants trash," he muttered, spitting. Should have sold her for parts. She didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't even lift her head. Maybe she had accepted that she was worthless. Just then, the wind shifted, and someone walked into the market. A human. He looked out of place here. His clothes were dark, his boots worn from travel. He had a weapon on his belt, but didn't reach for it. His face was tired, like someone who had seen too much war. The merchants watched him carefully, looking for anything human. One asked. The man didn't answer. He walked slowly through the market, stepping over chains and old stains. He looked at every empty cage, as if imagining what had been there. Finally, he stopped in front of the broken girl. She didn't look up. "Is she still for sale?" the man asked. The fat merchant laughed. "That one? She's useless. We were going to throw her out with the scrap." "Why? You want to collect garbage?" The human didn't smile. "How much?" The merchant rolled his eyes. 10 credits. 5. "If you carry her yourself." "Done," the man said, and threw a chip at him. Everyone stared. The girl blinked, confused. Slowly, she lifted her head and looked at him for the first time. He knelt beside her, looked into her tired eyes, and spoke. Gently, "You're coming with me." She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. "Can you walk?" he asked. She shook her head slowly, her legs twitching with sparks. He nodded, removed the chains from her arms, and carefully lifted her into his arms. She was light, too light, as he turned to leave. The merchant called out, "Good luck, human. She won't even survive the night." The man didn't answer. He just walked away. The girl rested her head against his chest. Her voice was a whisper, dry and rough. "Why me?" He looked down at her and said, "Because no one else did." The cargo ship's engines roared too. Life, lifting dust and scraps into the air as it left the slave market behind. Inside, the human sat quietly in the corner of the ship. The broken alien girl lying across a medical cot with straps still loose around her wrists. She hadn't moved since he carried her aboard. Her breathing was shallow. Her mechanical parts flickered in silence. Her blue skin looked pale under the ship's dull lights. He checked her vitals with an old scanner, beeped weakly. But she was alive. Barely. "Ship, heat up the medbay," the man said aloud. A robotic voice replied, "Confirmed, Commander Dren." He turned his attention back to her, gently brushing the dust from her face. There was beauty under the grima delicate face. High alien cheekbones, soft lips cracked from dehydration. But her eyes remained closed. He remembered the looks from the alien merchants. The laughter, the sneers. They thought he was mad, spending credits on someone who couldn't walk, who barely even blinked. But Dren had seen something. In her eyes when she looked up at him, pain, yes, but also something else. Survival. She had been left in chains, silent, unbought, like discarded trash. And yet, she hadn't given up completely. He didn't know why he cared. Not yet. The medbay lights came on with a soft hum. Machines scanned her from head to toe, listing out the damaged severed servo wires in both legs, a cracked power core in the chest, a damaged voice modulator, and nutrient levels near zero. She wasn't meant to survive. Dren whispered, but she did. Suddenly, her fingers twitched, her eyes opened slightly, red from exhaustion. Where am I? Her voice cracked like shattered glass. You're safe, he replied. No more chains. She tried to sit up, but her legs refused to move. She looked down, saw sparks again, and flinched. I can't function, she whispered. I am broken. You're not broken, he said. You were just left behind. A long silence filled the room. Then she looked at him directly. Why did you take me? Dren thought for a moment before answering. I've seen too many lives thrown away. Too many people treated like junk, he said. But you were alive, and that was enough. No one ever looked at me, she said, her voice barely more. Then a breath. Not since. Not since the war, he blinked. You were in the war. She nodded slowly. I was built for it. My limbs, my programming, everything. Until I failed, they said I wasn't useful anymore. You fought. Dren asked, curious now. I followed orders, she replied, bitter. Until I couldn't. More silence, then the ship gave a small beep. Course locked. Destination unknown. Dren stood and reached into a small locker. He pulled out a metal case, opened it, and took out a set of old but functional cybernetic repair tools. I'm no engineer, he said, kneeling by her side, but I've patched enough machines to try. Her eyes widened. You're going to fix me. I'm going to try, he said simply. He began with her left arm, carefully. Connecting the loose wires, her hand twitched again, this time stronger. She watched him closely, confused by his care. You treat me like a person, she said. You are a person, he answered, not looking up. Even if they forgot, I won't. A soft hum filled the room as her fingers moved for the first time in days. She stared at them in disbelief. Her lips trembled. No one has ever helped me before. Well, get used to it, he said with a small smile. You're mine now. Her eyes widened in surprise, but for the first time, they didn't hold fear, only hope. For the next 2 days, the alien girl said nothing. She stayed in the medical cot, arms folded across her chest, only her eyes moving, always watching him. She didn't speak, didn't ask questions, and didn't thank him, but she watched every movement Dren made. She followed with silent eyes when he walked across the room, when he adjusted the ship's course. Even when he reheated food, her eyes were there, sharp and alert. She wasn't just broken, she was studying him. Dren didn't mind. He knew that kind of silence. It wasn't emptiness, it was survival. He had seen soldiers like that after war, eyes that had seen too much. Bodies that moved slowly because the mind was still in battle. She reminded him of himself, years ago, that morning. He placed a small tray next to her bed. On it was a bowl of warm synth soup and protein bars. Nothing fancy, but better than market. Scraps, you need to eat, he said gently. Not expecting a response, she turned her head slowly. Looked at the tray, then at him. I'm not used to this, she said quietly. Her voice like soft sand on metal. Food? He asked, smiling a little. No, she whispered, kindness. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the bowl carefully. She tasted the soup. Her body was starving, but she tried to eat slowly, as if not believing it would last. Dren didn't say anything more. He sat on the other side of the room and worked on his tools, pretending not to notice when she finished every last drop. Later that night, the ship shuddered. A warning beep echoed through the cockpit. Unidentified craft detected. The ship's AI said, approaching at low speed. Dren narrowed his eyes and tapped the screen. A small ship was tailing them. Hidden at first in deep space dust, he stood quickly and checked the weapon system. "They're not transmitting any ID from the medbay." Her voice came, "Is it them?" He turned, surprised to hear fear in her voice for the first time. "Who?" he asked. "The ones who sold me," she whispered. "They watch the markets." "Looking for failed products?" Dren frowned. "You think they're tracking you?" Nodded slowly. "They don't like loose ends." A tense silence filled the ship. Then, without warning, she tried to sit up. Her repaired arm moved well, but her legs were still weak. She collapsed back onto the bed, frustrated. "I can't fight," she said. "I'll only slow you down." He walked toward her and crouched beside the bed. "You don't need to fight," he said. "You just need to survive." Her eyes met his, full of pain and guilt. "That's all I've ever done." Survive. Dren reached into a drawer and pulled out a small device, a memory chip. "Do you remember this?" She took it with shaking fingers, looking at it closely. Her eyes widened in shock. This is mine," she whispered. "Where did you find it?" "Hidden inside the joint of your damaged leg," Dren said, "encrypted." Military grade. She closed her eyes, and tears ran down her cheek silver. "Not clear, like liquid metal. I was more than just a slave," she whispered. "I was a prototype, designed for war, programmed to lead. What happened? I disobeyed," she said, her voice shaking. "I refused to kill children on a mining moon. So they wiped my name and sold me as garbage." Dren was silent for a moment, then said, "That makes you the bravest soldier I've ever met." She looked at him like she didn't believe it, but also like she wanted to. In that quiet moment, something changed. She stopped watching him with fear and started watching him with hope. The night was long and space was silent, but inside the small ship, the past began to scream. The girl, once broken, now beginning to heal, jerked awake from the medical cot. Her breath was fast, her body trembling. She had dreamed again, not of freedom or kindness, but of fire. Of commands shouted in languages that hurt her ears, of children crying and metal. Arms forcing her to obey, she touched her chest where the cracked power core pulsed gently under her ribs. Still alive, still hers. Commander Dren, sitting at the ship's console, turned when he heard her gasp. "Nightmare?" he asked softly. She looked at him, her silver blue eyes filled with confusion. "I don't know if it was a dream or a memory." He walked over, sat beside her cot, and handed her a warm drink. "Tell me." She held the cup with both hands, grateful for the warmth, and stared at the ceiling. There was a colony. Children working in tunnels. My unit was sent to cleanse it. I was leading the squad. Dren didn't interrupt. I saw a little girl with a broken leg. She couldn't run. The alien whispered, "I couldn't kill her. I just couldn't." Her voice cracked. "So I told my team to stand down. I helped her hide." "What did your commanders do?" Dren asked quietly. "They called me defective, shut down my command code, and sold me piece by piece," she said, bitterness in every word. "My memories were supposed to be erased, but some of them stayed." Dren clenched his fists. "You were punished for being merciful. I was made to be a weapon," she said, "but something inside me didn't follow the code." She looked at him now, truly looked. "Why did you care enough to fix me?" "Because I've been called worthless too," he said. "And I know what it feels like to be thrown away by the people you served." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The soft hum of the ship filled the air. She reached for her legs, still stiff and slow. Dren noticed the sparks had faded since his last repair. But movement was limited. "I want to stand again," she whispered. "Not just walk, but stand for myself." "We'll get there," he said. "Together." He began working on her leg joints again, carefully opening the access panels and reconnecting the corroded circuits. Her hands trembled, but not from pain this time. "Do you remember your name?" he asked. She paused, then shook her head slowly. "They took it when they reprogrammed me. I was just Unit 47 Beta after that. You deserve better than a number," he said. She gave a small, tired smile. Then, "Can I choose a name?" "Course." She thought for a long moment, then said softly, "Kale." Kale Dren repeated with a nod. "That's a strong name." Suddenly, an alert rang out from the ship's console. Dren rushed over, reading. The red signals flashing across the screen. "Unmarked ship, approaching same one from before." Kale's breath caught in her throat. "They're coming. Stay here," Dren said, reaching for his blaster and locking down the cockpit. "But?" Kale shook her head. "No. I won't hide again." She pulled herself up with her working arms, her legs twitching but steadying slowly. She stood, shaky but upright, first time in years. Dren turned and froze, watching her stand with burning eyes. "You're walking, I'm remembering who I am," she said, "and I will never go back in chains." The stars outside the ship looked peaceful, but inside, the storm had already begun. Kale stood in the hallway, her body trembling, not from weakness, but from memory, from rage. She had been forgotten, sold like broken metal, dumped into the dust with no name and no voice. But now, the ones who did it were coming back. Commander Dren checked the ship's long-range scanner again. "They're not broadcasting any signal," he said. "But they're on a direct intercept course." Kale's voice was low, calm. "That's how they operate." "Who are they?" Dren asked, his hand near his blaster. Kale stared through the window at the stars. "They call themselves the Cleaners. Not soldiers, not officials, just shadows. Sent to erase what doesn't fit their perfect machine." Dren looked at her, surprised. "You're telling me these people aren't just slavers, they're executioners?" Kale nodded. "They erased dozens like me failed experiments. Disobedient units, soldiers who saw too much." Dren clenched his jaw. "They made a mistake this time. They always come in silence," Kale whispered. "They won't hail us. They won't demand surrender. They'll just try to destroy the ship without a trace." Dren activated the defense shields. "Then let's give them something to remember." As he worked on the ship's console, Kale limped to the weapons locker. Her legs were still weak, but they moved now like old gears warming up. She opened the locker and found a long, smooth rifle with an unfamiliar shape. "What's this?" Dren turned. "Human technology. Modified for alien neural feed, back specially made for someone like you." She blinked. "You prepared this?" "I believed you'd stand again," he said simply. "And I knew you'd want to fight back." Kale lifted the rifle and tested the grip. The memory of battle came back like a cold wind. Her fingers moved with quiet skill. The ship rocked suddenly. A light hit them from behind. "They're here," Dren said, charging weapons. Kale moved faster than he expected. She made her way to the back turret, linked her neural band to the targeting system, and exhaled slowly. "You good?" he asked through the comm. Her voice was steel. "I'm better than good." The first blast shook their shields. Sparks flew from a side panel. Kale's targeting system locked on. She fired a return shot, silent, precise, deadly. The enemy ship turned. Now cautious, now unsure, inside the enemy ship, unknown to Kale. A voice hissed through dark speakers. "Unit 47 Beta is alive. She was terminated." Another replied, "No." The first voice said, "She remembers." Kale fired again. This time, the blast struck one of their engines. The enemy ship slowed, trailing fire. Dren shouted over the comm, "They're retreating." But Kale's eyes narrowed. "No, they're regrouping. Should we run?" Dren asked. Kale didn't blink. "No, we stand here. If we run, they'll keep chasing." She disconnected from the turret, limped back into the command room. Her body ached, but her mind was sharp. "They'll send another team," she said. "Stronger, quieter, crueler." Dren sighed. "Then we prepare." She looked at him and, for the first time, smiled, a real one, not broken or guarded. "You didn't. Just by me," she said. "You gave me something they couldn't take." "What's that?" "A reason to fight." And outside the small ship, space held its breath. Because the one they called worthless had remembered who she was. The silence didn't last. Less than an hour after the first retreat, the enemy returned bigger, faster. And this time, they didn't hide. 3 dark ships dropped from hyperspace like knives slicing through the stars. Kale and Dren stood together in the narrow bridge of the ship, watching as red lights filled the radar. "They're not here to negotiate," Dren muttered. "They never are," Kale replied, her voice calm but sharp. She wore a fresh combat vest, patched together from Dren's supplies. Her old dress had been folded and placed gently in a drawer, almost like a memory she didn't want to wear anymore. She was standing on her own legs now, not perfectly, but strong enough. "They want to erase me," she said, "but this time, I won't let them." The enemy ships began to fire without warning. Energy blasts tore through the void, shaking Dren's small ship. Sparks burst from control panels. Sirens screamed, and smoke began to fill the vents. Dren rushed to the cockpit, grabbing the manual. "Override, shields down to 38%, he said through clenched teeth. Kale was already moving, limping through the smoke, dragging the heavy rifle behind her. Her steps were slow, but full of fire. The airlock hissed, and the rear boarding ramp began to creak open. "What are you doing?" Dren shouted. "They'll hit us any second." Kale didn't answer. Instead, she reached the loading ramp and turned to look at him. Her eyes glowed faintly, now not just from light, but from power that had long been buried. "I was built to protect others," she said, "and I'm done." Running, before he could stop her, she stepped out into the open ramp. Her weapon charged and steady in her arms. Outside, one of the enemy ships lowered a boarding skiff. A group of armored figures began descending. Plasma rifles in hand, Kale raised her weapon and fired. The first enemy was thrown backward. Armor scorched, the others spread out, firing blindly into the smoke. Dren watched from behind the blast shield, heart pounding. He wanted to run to her, to protect her, but she wasn't the one who needed saving anymore. She moved with the grace of K-Sov, a warrior. Ducking behind the outer cargo crates, firing with deadly precision, every step was pain. But she didn't stop. One enemy aimed for the cockpit, firing a charged bolt straight toward Dren. Kale saw it. She didn't think, she just moved. Her body slammed into the path of the bolt, taking the full hit to her side. She hit the floor hard, metal on metal. "No!" Dren shouted, rushing toward her. But Kale was still breathing. Blood and oil leaking from her side. Her fingers still clenched the weapon. Her eyes blazing. "I'm not done," she gasped. Not yet. The last 2 enemies charged forward, thinking she was weak. Thinking she was finished. They were wrong. Kale surged upward, rage and memory flooding her limbs. She fired once, twice. The enemies dropped, smoke rising from their armor. Then silence returned. Dren reached her side, dropping to his knees. "You're bleeding," he said, panicked. Kale smiled faintly. "I bled before." But no one cared. He lifted her carefully. "I care now." Her voice was soft, fading. "You believed in me. When I was just a shadow." "You were never just a shadow," he whispered. "You were the light they tried to destroy," as he carried her back inside. Alarms still blinked on the console, but for the first time, Kale had done more than survive. She had stood, she had fought, she had protected, just like she was meant to. Kale lay on the medical cot again, but this time, it was different. Not because she was broken, but because she had survived. Commander Dren sat beside her, eyes focused, holding a damp cloth as he cleaned the burn across her side. Her blood silver blue ran. Slower now, thicker and healing. You should rest, he said softly. Kale's voice was faint but steady. I did rest. For too long outside the ship, the wreckage of the enemy skiff floated silently in space. The boarding team was gone, destroyed not by war machines, but by one discarded girl who had once been labeled trash. Dren glanced at her. You saved me. She managed a tired smile. You saved me first. He shook his head. No. I only gave you a chance. You're the one who proved you were never worthless. The ship's AI chimed softly. Incoming message from Galactic Relay Station, KL. Blinked, confused. Who would be contacting us? Dren pressed a button. A hologram flickered to life and older alien woman in high command robes appeared. Her voice formal. Unit 47 Beta. This is General Saren of the Outer Core Resistance. She said, we received your signal. The memory chip you carried contains evidence of war crimes committed by the Dominion. Kale sat up, shocked. You believe me? We believed no one had survived, the general replied. But your survival, your memory, changes everything. The hologram faded. Kale stared at the wall. Stunned, they erased my name. And now my memory may bring them down. Dren grinned. Looks like they picked the wrong girl to discard. She looked at him, a strange mix of joy and fear in her expression. What now? He stood, offering his hand. Now. We finish what they started. Kale took his hand and rose, standing tall despite the pain. Her legs still clicked slightly. Her chest still ached, but her heart had never been clearer. I have a name again, she said softly, and a mission. They walked together to the bridge. The stars ahead were endless, but for the first time, Kale didn't feel lost. She wasn't a unit. She wasn't a weapon. She wasn't a slave. She was Kale, a survivor, a fighter, and no longer worthless.